Hey friends, how's it going? Ash here. Welcome back to Extra Gents. I don't know what that was. Today we're taking a look at the newest fragrance in the Lalique Encre line, which up until now I would have said is the Encre Noir line, but it no longer is because now we have Encre Indigo. Kind of interesting how Lalique has done their naming conventions. Encre Noir, which has 3 fragrances, now Encre Indigo, and then there's Ombre Noir, which comes in a very similar bottle style. So sometimes it's Encre and then something else, other times it's something else and then Noir. Sometimes it's both Encre and Noir. I just realized my bottle is not completely flat. Nice. As always, today we're gonna be taking a look at this presentation together. I'll talk about this fragrance a little bit, let you know what I think about it, and let you know whether or not it's something that I feel like you should check out. So I'll have this one linked in the description below. I got my bottle from fragrancebuy.ca. I think that's really the only discounter right now that has it, and it's running a pretty penny as of this video, a little over 80 bucks. Technically a tick over $80, right at about 81 and 80 cents as of this video. They also have some 95% full bottles there for like $68, but who knows how long that's gonna last. And that is gonna be something that is a potential sticking point because Lalique, their fragrances are typically very high quality, but oftentimes people, they wanna pick them up for a certain price point, which is not 80. Let's go ahead and start things off by taking a look at the presentation here. Actually, now that wobbly bottle is starting to get to me. So here we have the front of the box. You get the name of the fragrance, name of the house, size and concentration, 100 mils, eau de parfum. On one side, it just says Lalique. On the other, it says Lalique with a QR code. And then on the back, you have the name of the house, name of the fragrance. Once again, you have the Lalique logo on top of the box. And on the bottom, a whole bunch of information. You've got your ingredients, your badge code, and your barcode. Badge code is L0J23. Here's the bottle, and I think it looks great. I actually love the little gradient that this one has. Darker blue toward the bottom, black up toward the top. On the front, the name of the fragrance, name of the house. It's very simple, minimalistic, but it looks great. Then on the bottom, you have a sticker with your badge code, and the cap clicks into place. If I can nitpick, the cap is very lightweight, feels kind of cheap, and while it does click into place, it's the worst part of the whole presentation here. I really like with Encre Noir, all 3 fragrances, how they have a nice wooden cap up top. And then the Ombre Noir cap looks very good as well. This one just feels a little bit down market compared to the others in this line or similar fragrances from the same house. Not similar in scent, but similar in bottle style. Let's go ahead and share a couple sprays here. Let's do it. There we go, atomizer's pretty good. One thing I like about the atomizer, this is a very, very small thing, but maybe some other houses should start doing this. The atomizer is slightly concave. Now I know that this is not the only fragrance house that does this or anything like that, but it's a very small thing that when you put your finger on it, makes it just feel a little nicer. That little dip that it has, your finger just kind of fits right in there and it feels nice. Again, that's the most minor of minor things, but that little tiny concave bit on top of the atomizer is nice. It's a nice touch. Let's start talking about how Encre Indigo smells. So when this was first announced, with this being named Encre Indigo, I was anticipating something with a potential blue lean. I wasn't sure exactly how close it would be to the Encre Noir fragrances that came before it. So let's dive into that. Does it smell similar to the Encre Noir fragrances? Yes and no. When you spray this on, you can pick up that vetiver, and that's going to tie it in with the other Encre Noir fragrances, the other Encre fragrances. But it is obviously not as dark as those. It has more sweetness when you first spray this one on. Actually, a decent amount of sweetness. Not like a bubblegummy sweetness, but a green sort of sweetness. You have juniper and bergamot off the top, a little bit of pink pepper as well, so some fresh spices, aromatics, and you get a good amount of tea in here pretty much right away. Overly heavy-handed, not sugary or anything like that, not bubblegummy, none of that at all. Has a nice classiness to it, as you would expect from a Lalique fragrance, from an Encre fragrance. And that vetiver, while it's maybe a little bit rooty, it's not as dark, it's not as heavy as the fragrances that have come before it. Maybe the vetiver itself would be closest to what you find in Encre Noir Sport. But Encre Noir Sport also has more of that watery aspect to it, and this one stays concentrated on that tea, on that kind of green aspect that it has, aromatics and sweetness. When I first sprayed this on, when I pulled it out of the box, sprayed it on for the first time, I've actually had this now for about a week and a half. It reminded me of this low DC, blue DC actually from Issey Miyake. I said low DC, blue DC, low blue DC. So I did end up wearing these side by side a couple of times, and they are not close enough that this is a replacement for that. This is not something that's super close to this, but they are in a similar style. Both quite green. This one over here, low blue DC, making use of cypress quite prominently, whereas this one is using tea. But the juniper comes across pretty strongly in both of these when you first spray them on, and that might have you cross some wires and think, oh, well, this is kind of like that, and it's gonna be mainly the way the juniper comes across and the green aspects that each one of these fragrances have. And actually, as they dry, they get a little bit closer even than they are initially, but they are not the same. But I would say it's one of those circumstances where if you like this, you'll probably like this. If you hate this, you may not enjoy this. But this is the fragrance actually that Encre Indigo reminded me of more so than the Encre Noir fragrances. While that Encre Noir DNA is here, especially in that vetiver, this is not redundant whatsoever with the 3 Encre Noir fragrances that came before this. And if I can be honest here, the first time that I wore Encre Indigo, I wasn't overly impressed. It reminded me, again, a little bit of low blue DC, which as I wore them side by side, I was like, okay, whatever. It's not as close as I originally thought that it was, but it didn't grab my attention right away the first time that I wore it. I was like, initially, you know, that sweet tea, juniper, bergamot, aromatic kind of open that it had me feeling very lackadaisical, just kind of right down the middle, like, that's okay. As I wore this more though, it grew on me more and more. It's got a great classiness to it, like you would expect from a Lalique fragrance. I said that weird, Lalique. It's got a maturity to it, but in a way that's very appealing. Sometimes a fragrance that has a, you know, more of a mature feel to it, you'll smell it and go, yeah, I couldn't use that in a whole heck of a lot of situations, but this one you can. Solid for spring, I would say early fall, actually just all of fall really. Good daytime scent. I think for me, actually, I would lean a little more toward daytime use with this one. It's different for sure, versus all the other stuff coming out right now. This is its own thing, you know? While I said, you know, it reminded me a little bit of low blue DC, again, just to really drive that home, when you wear them side by side, you'll see some marked differences, okay? This isn't one of those deals where it's hyper similar. Just one of those things that very commonly happens with fragrances where it might, you know, off the rip remind you of something, and then when you compare closer, you go, not super close. But yeah, even the Encre fragrances that came before this one, you can tell this is in the same line. But as I said, it's not redundant. It doesn't do the same thing that any of the other ones do. Pretty unique, actually, and smells nice. The quality is there. The issue with this, so the 2 issues actually are, firstly, the price. And I'm not saying that it is not worth 80 bucks. The quality is there, okay? The quality is nice, the presentation is good, the smell is good. The issue is just the name of the fragrance house for a lot of people. When you say Lalique, what do you think? Cheapies, right? If we're honest here, cheapies at discounters, 30 bucks, maybe 40 bucks, sometimes under 30. It is almost the poster child fragrance brand for having fragrances that are priced here at discounters where the quality is up here. So if the price creeps up here, again, it's in line with what the quality is. It's just, are people gonna be comfortable shelling out that money for a Lalique? I think it's worth it, but I also firmly believe that in the not too distant future, that price is probably gonna dip down to 50-ish, you know, kind of like what Ombre Noir is, and it becomes way more attractive at that price point, obviously. And if it dips even further below that, now we're talking. So that's a potential issue. The other potential issue is it does not project all that strongly for me. Now, I've only had this for about a week and a half, so keep that in mind. You know, I've not, you know, worn it through a whole season or anything like that. But after the opening, when you start heading through the mid, it sits closer to the skin. So in comparison to this one, I was wearing them, of course, side by side a couple times. This outperformed this. Now, to be fair, this is a pretty good performing fragrance, but it became really apparent, you know, an hour, 2 hours in, which one was stronger, and it wasn't this one. So that could be an issue as well. If you're looking for a fragrance that has good projection for multiple hours, you probably aren't gonna find that here. Now, of course, you could go heavier with it, and if this were cheap, then that would be a great option. Just load it down, who cares? But it's a little bit on the higher end as far as designers from cheapy brands typically go at discounters right now. That was a really convoluted way of saying it'll probably get cheaper. As far as longevity goes, it seems to be average for me, not anything crazy, but not super weak. As far as longevity goes, it's just projection. It sits a little close, maybe a little sooner than I would like. So there we go. Those are first impressions on Encre Indigo. I do think in general, younger guys, it's not going to appeal to as much because it does have that bit of maturity to it. It does focus more on tea, a decently sweet tea, but still tea. And then your greens, your aromatics, that is the focal point here. And of course vetiver, but I'm okay with that. I love vetiver. So while I do think that at the price point that it's at now, it's not a terrible buy, this is one of those times where you say, well, it's a Lalique, you may wanna hold off, unless you're a big fan of the Encre line, fan of Lalique in general, or a fan of fragrances of this style, then it's worth checking out now. So there we go, guys. That will do it for me in my wobbly bottle of Encre Indigo. Thank you guys for hanging out with me here today. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you tomorrow with another fragrance video. See you guys later.